So in a moment, we're going to open the floor to questions. But before we do, we've got an excellent panel here. As we heard at the beginning, both George and as you know, Beverly are brilliant scholars on Hildegard. And part of the process of making a film is really intense research. As we saw in Michael's brilliant film, he shared with us some of his own journey in discovering his creativity through the example, intercession, and inspiration of Hildegard. So keep that in mind when we come to the discussions. But before we do, just to allow the panel to have a little word, I'm going to begin by asking George, do you think that the film captured that giant of a nun, Hildegard? It's a very ambiguous question, but I know you...
She's impossible to capture, and some of her qualities can't be readily expressed in any medium that she didn't express herself in. I think that's not a shortcoming of the film, far from it. There are certain works that can't be translated linguistically, for example, and others that can't be translated generically. When Hildegard, for example, presents her language, it's quite a bizarre thing when you look at her manuscript with these words that to us are complete gibberish. But she has helpfully transcribed above or below the words, usually in Latin, sometimes in the vernacular German, what these gibberish words mean. And these gibberish words are a language that have been revealed to her by God. I think none of us, including people who have spent a long time studying this language, can really grasp the fullness of its richness, because ultimately that is something that could be experienced only by Hildegard and by the nuns in her convent. We know that they didn't speak this language continually, but we know that there are words that certainly were used among themselves, and some of her music contains words written in this language that is truly untranslatable. So it's impossible to get across the fullness of Hildegard. Having said that, what a great job. What a truly great job. And I think what one of the many things that I loved about the film, Michael, was the way you gently and almost unnoticed brought us from live action to animation. That's very neat and much simpler said than done. Congratulations to you, and I want to thank also the contributors who are here. I see Katie, I see Beverly. Are there other people in the film who are here? Your contributions and those of everyone else were greatly appreciated. I will be honest and say that some were farther out there than I am, but that's cool. I've got a way to go, and they've gone there. What I was curious to know, when you were in, for example, Germany, visiting the monastery, was it a case that you happened to be traveling only with the group of North Americans, or were there in fact people from other nations there? Yeah.
Well, the first group when I went over there for spring break was with North Americans. There were some Canadians. So when I was over there again last year, I was mostly with Germans. And so there's a very different take between the Germans.
That's what I was interested to know.
Yeah, the Germans really know about her medicine, but they don't know about her theology as Matthew Fox has presented it. So there's this kind of interesting exchange of ideas that can occur. And I was going to try to do this Hildegard Congress in Boulder this coming October, but I got superseded because the Dalai Lama's coming. So
Lama Shmama.
Yeah. So culturally, there's a very different understanding of who she is. And one of the things about the film is that I wanted to appeal to a younger audience, not necessarily to the Matthew Fox audience, and that's why I incorporated the animation into it. And I really tried to give it more of a popular feel.
But you did that without dumbing down in the slightest.
No, I mean, I've watched this film, as you can imagine, many, many times, and I'm like, there's a lot of information in there. And then when you're talking, I believe you're talking about her alphabet, her language, which I didn't even touch on because I didn't even know about it. Otherwise, that would be a whole other section.
Right. Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Beverly's reminded me that we've got to stick to schedule, so we'll throw the discussion open to the floor now. So if anyone has a question, now's your chance. Who would like to be first?
Here.
Who was in the animation part, who was the character?
Who?
The young
Oh,
animated figure of the boy
oh,
running older to...
that's Mikey. That's me. Yeah.
Inner child.
Yeah. At the beginning. Yeah. So I worked with, since I worked in Hollywood for a long time, I worked with an animator who worked for Disney and Warner Brothers, and I had him come up with this character for me. The person who did the animation is now just a freshman at college in Los Angeles, and he was a high school senior. He's at Loyal Marymount in LA, and just amazing. This is a great little story. He had no idea who Hildegard was when he started it. Now he's taking Christian studies at Loyal Marymount, and it is like completely into it. And I think they want to bring the film there and show it and everything. So it was great. That was like what I wanted. Inspire somebody.
Anyone else?
Carolyn.
Thanks for that. Your last point is related to the question I wanted to ask about how people found themselves. When you spoke with them, did they talk about how they were introduced to Hildegard? This high school student found out about her through your working with you, but about the healers, did they read about her? Did they hear about her? What was their introduction to Hildegard, if they mentioned that?
Well, it just really varies. I think mostly in this country it's through her music is how most people are familiar with her. And I think of them as everybody I've met, they're like the Hildegardians. There's a whole culture out there, and I'm sure Beverly has encountered these people, and I was one of them. So there's something about it, you just want to like share it and spread the love, you know? I mean, I can't stop myself. So I was a spiritual person to start with, but it's just this aspect that really kind of resonated within me, and there's something about why we need her right now and why she's so important. And I think one of the reasons why they did canonize her is we're still talking about her. It's pretty unusual because there's nobody around that can say, oh, there's a miracle, I just saw it, as far as I know.
There's, I think that lady at the front as well.
I was wondering how you chose the music that was not Hildegard's music in the movie.
I worked with a German-Polish composer in Los Angeles, Chris Prowski, and first off, his culture really connected him to the music. Once again, here's somebody who didn't know about her, who really found inspiration. He was already doing music. He was already a musical director at a Lutheran church in Denver. And he just really got into it. One of the difficulties is when you work with medieval music is that it tends to put us to sleep. right? There's kind of a cadence to it that just puts us in a different time and place. And I wanted the music to be contemporary. I wanted it to move the audience in a way that they didn't really know they were being moved. Whereas I think with medieval music, in the pure sense, it's hard to do that. It really kind of sets the tone for something else.
Do our medievalists agree?
I was wondering, you said you went with a group of spiritual directors in the spring of 2013, and was wondering if that was part of a group. I know Spiritual Directors International took a group in the fall of 2013, and so just wondering who that group was.
Well, I'm actually going to be at the conference next week for Spiritual Directors International in Louisville. The group that I went with was not part of that group. So Liz Allman is the one who runs Spiritual Directors International. She was over there in 2013, and I happened to be there at the same time, and we connected, and I filmed one of her folks presenting. So it's a very interesting group. I'm not sure if everybody knows about them, but I think they have like 7,000 members worldwide, and they, like I said, consist of spiritual directors in all denominations, from rabbis to monks to priests and all the different orders. And their purpose is really to help people in their own special way find their spirituality. They're almost like, I guess the way I would think about it, you want a physical therapist or a coach, that's what they provide for spirituality.
So you mentioned about how you wanted to appeal to a younger audience, but I was a little curious with the animation and stuff. But I'm a little curious about who exactly you're hoping the audience is. If you could talk a little bit more about that, and also how you are getting it out to them, and how you're planning on getting it exposed to them, and vice versa, and also sort of a little bit more specifically what you're hoping people will come away from this film with. Like you say, like, now people need Hildegard. Why? What do they need from her? Does that make sense?
Yeah, those are good questions. It's easy to look back when I was in my 30s and look back to my 20s, and the beginning of the film is really a pivotal moment for me, deciding if I'm going to be an art conservator or be an artist. And I think that's a question a lot of 20 and 30-year-olds are challenged with. What am I going to do with my life? Am I going to chase the dollar, or am I going to do what really feels good within me? And I clearly love what I do. I mean, this is what I've been doing for 30 years. I love making film. I love working in the arts. So I want people to be, especially the younger people, is just to really sit with that and acknowledge it and go with it. Because if you don't go with it, you end up in your 50s and you're just not happy, and you're trying to figure out what you did and all that. So that's a big part of it for me, is trying to give some information back that I've learned. The way we're getting the film out is really through communities, and I'm just putting it out there for people to do a screening. We're scheduled to show it in Louisville at a theater for a benefit for the Hildegard House, which is a hospice center that they're building there, next Friday. I'm showing it at a parish in Ohio on Solstice. But that's really, it's kind of a word-of-mouth process. I mean, this is my labor of love. I don't have a multi-million-dollar marketing budget. It's really through showing it, getting people inspired about it, and spreading it that way. We have to start small, and hopefully it'll get big. Did that answer your question?
Yes, mostly.
Mostly, okay.
One more question we have time for. Bill.
Can I ask you about what's not in the film that you wish was there now? I mean, what was interesting to me, this plays off George's question about the variety of people and their determination that they know Hildegard. I mean, the number of positive people who are saying, this is what Hildegard meant or did or means, and how you put that all together. There must be lots of bits on the cutting room floor, and I'd like to hear about that. And if you could change that now as part of the creative process, what you would change, if anything.
Well, I think I interviewed 18 people, and each interview was about an hour long, so it gives me, 17 hours, and then probably another 3 or 4 hours of B-roll, so it's like a 20-to-1 ratio for shooting. A lot of what ended up on the cutting room floor was them saying the same thing. And so I felt I had to kind of differentiate a little bit, so we weren't hearing repeats. I also had a lot of personal story, too, and I didn't want to weigh it on one person or the other, so that ended up on the floor. Matthew Fox watched the film as his Christmas present. And he called me up the next day, and the only thing that he said I needed to have more about the feminine in there, the divine feminine. And that probably could have been a whole other movie as well. So that's the only thing I didn't have in there, but I didn't even think of it when I was doing it. The more I get into Hildegard, I'm happy I didn't know what I knew when I went into it, because I would have just been completely overwhelmed, because there's way too much. And this film is not meant to be the PBS, National Geographic, or the Nova exposure. I'm sure you all know more about her than I do, but I just wanted to kind of hear all these different stories, put it together, and inspire people.
I think you certainly have.
Yes.
And will continue to do. I'll just hand over to Beverly now for her closing words.
I think I can speak into this. So I just want to, thank you all for being such a wonderful audience, and your patience and then attentiveness and your wonderful questions. So we will have a chance, if you'd like, to ask further questions to Michael in a reception. And it's at the opposite end of this building in the Braun Room. I imagine there's someone waiting to point us in the right direction, but when you go out, I think it's that way, yeah. Just keep going and you'll see the Braun Room, and please do come there for a while and talk to each other and ask questions of any of us. And of course, I'd like to thank our moderator and our panelists who know so much about film. The question that you asked, George, I noticed all of that, but I wouldn't know what words to put it in about going back and forth from animation. I would just say it all flowed so smoothly from one type of presentation to another. I was very impressed with that. So we thank you, Michael, for coming and for wanting to inspire us, for being inspired by Hildegard, so that you want to inspire more of us, and for your just gracious and wonderful presence here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.